Okay, let's look at some other common methods here. Okay, for Selenium. So there is the get CSS value, similar to get text, get tag name. You can also grab the CSS property value of any particular element. Now, as I said, CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So it will probably give you the font color, font size. There are different CSS values for every element. So you can grab those values if you want to verify it at any point of time. Okay. Now I was talking about get attribute, right? So we have seen get text, which is to only grab the text value of a particular element. But if you want to grab any particular property value of a element, you can use the get attribute and then pass that particular property to this particular method, and it will grab the value of that property, right? So this is very useful when you want to validate any particular element based on some specific property. getSize will basically fetch the width and height of the element. getLocation, it will return you the exact location based on the coordinates, right? Which this element is present on. Okay, now there are few other manage window methods. Okay, so manage window dot maximize, this will maximize the current browser window. Dot full screen will change the current browser window to full screen. Get position, it will get you the position of the current window based on from what position it is from the top of the page. Okay. Set position, you can set a specific position for your current window based on some coordinates. If you want a specific size for your browser window, you can do that using this set position. Okay. Uh, Also set position and also set size, which will set the size of the current window. So if you want, say, some X into Y size of your window, you can do it using set size, and then you can place it in some specific position on your screen. But these are very specific tests if you want for a specific application. Not commonly used, but still can be used. Okay. So let's see. I think important ones are the get attribute. Okay. We can also see get CSS value if it is applicable for any particular element. So let's go back here. Okay, so if I want to grab the CSS value of this username field, okay, so what I'll say is driver dot find element by dot ID dot get CSS value. This is also going to return me a string. Okay, and inside this I can say font color, I think. So you need to make sure that this particular property is correct, right? So do some research before you enter this particular CSS property, which you want to grab the value of that particular element, right? So font color. Okay. Let's see if it is correct or not. Okay, so it printed null, which means that's not the correct value. So we have to get a specific CSS property to get it working. Let me check what it is. Okay, let's try this font size. Okay, so this is correct CSS property font size. As you can see, it is displaying. It is 18 pixel, right? So similarly, you can verify any particular CSS property. Just make sure that you are entering the right one here. Okay, so that was about CSS. Now about, let's try to use attribute. Okay. Okay, so we were trying out this login button, right? We were not able to grab the text here, but let's now use the get attribute in order to grab this uh, anything, right? So let's try this value, whether we are able to grab this value. Okay, so let's go back to our script here. And where was it? Okay, so here we are clicking on the button. So let's try out here. So what I'm going to say is driver dot find element by dot id login button dot get attribute. Okay, inside this I need to pass the actual attribute, which is the value here. Okay, this is going to return me a string, so I should probably store it in a string. Okay, so I will name it something btn value, and I will put a validation here dot assert true btn value dot equals login. Okay, so this should grab me the attribute value of this particular attribute, which is value. Okay, and then I'm putting a assertion on that, whether it is correct or not. Okay, so everything passed, which means it's correct. You can also print it out if you want to see the value. Similarly, you can get value of any particular attribute which you can see for this element. It may be type, it may be class, it may be data test, ID, name, anything. So this is very useful when you are trying to validate any particular element based on a particular attribute. Okay. So some manage window commands which are useful. Okay, so as you can see, whenever we launch our web page, it launches in a specific size, right? But what if I want to maximize the screen before I run my scripts? And it's actually advisable to maximize your screen because sometimes some elements may not be visible in some particular size of the window. So it's always useful to kind of maximize before you start running any particular tests on your web page. So here we'll say manage.window dot, we'll say maximize. Okay, now if I run, it will see, you will see it will open in the maximize, it will maximize the screen before running the tests. Now some other useful things, you can also do a full screen of the window if you want to test it on a full screen window, your application, right? And among other things. So if I want to get the position of my current window, right? So you can use something called point, right? So this is a class provided by Selenium. It stores some coordinates which is returned by the getPosition method. Okay, so driver dot manage dot window dot getPosition, and then you can store it in a point object. Now, if you want to see what are the coordinates for your window position, so for that you can say point dot x, and it will be in the xy coordinates, point dot y. Okay, so if I run this again, so let's disable this maximize, otherwise we will not see any actual position of the window. Okay, so as you can see, the x coordinate was 9, y coordinate was 9. So it was at this particular point. This your window was opened at this particular point. Okay. Similarly, if you want to set a specific position for your window, what you can do is you can say point. You can define your point, right? Points. So you can do it like this, and you can say 20, 20, right? XY coordinates you can pass here. And then you can use a method called setPosition. Okay, and you can pass the point here, which you have created. So this will set your window position to 20, 20, which are the XY coordinates. You might not see much difference because we have not exactly increased the points. But if you notice, there was a slight movement of your window to a specific position. So that's how you set the position of your window if you want it specifically for your testing. Okay. So similarly, you can also set the dimension of your window, right? So if you, as I was saying, some application might just work with one particular dimension or screen size, right? So for those kind of scenarios, you can set your own dimensions, and then you can use the set size method to create a new dimension for your window, right? So what I can say here is 1200 comma 800, right? So this is the width and height which we are defining for our window. Now, if you are this could be useful if you're testing in different screen sizes, right? So laptop screen size may be different. If you have got a monitor, that screen size may be different. So if your application behaves differently in these screen sizes, you can set it before you run your tests. So set size, and then just pass the dimension which you have defined. Okay, now we are entering into some specific methods which are present in Selenium to handle different scenarios in your application, right? Till now, we have all seen some common methods like clicking on any element or writing or typing any text or getting any particular value, right? Or managing our windows or browsers, right? So all those methods we have seen till now, but these are specific scenarios methods, right? So something called the select class, which is present in Selenium, and it provides you with different methods to interact with um, different drop downs, select drop downs in your pages, in your web pages. Okay, so there are different ways you can select a particular element in a drop down in particular web page. Okay, so these are The first is select by visible text. Okay, so there are different options in your drop down whenever you come across any drop down, and every option will have a display text. Okay, so you can use this select method, select by visible text, in order to select that option with the given text which is displayed for that particular option. Okay, so that option will be selected. Similarly, we also have got a deselect method. Okay, so this will deselect the option by the given or displayed text. Then the next method is select by index. Okay, now if you don't want to select it by text, you want to select it dynamically. Okay, you can do it by index. Okay, so index like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, right? So you can pass any particular index, or you can also do it randomly, right? You can select a particular index based on some random number which you are generating within a particular range, and that will basically randomize your test, right? It will pick up the option based on some random index which you are generating. Similarly, deselect by index, it will deselect the option that matches the given index. Then there is select by value. Okay, so every select drop down and every option has got a particular value which is defined inside the web element. Okay, you will find it in your options inside the select drop down. So that time you can use the given value and select the option. Similarly, deselect by value. Okay, so these are all the methods through which you can select and deselect your options in select drop down. Similarly, you have got a method get all selected options. Now every select drop down has got options. Okay, and if it has got options, if you want to see what are all the options which are present in that drop down, then you can use this get all selected options, which means it will return you all the options, right, which are already selected. Then the first selected option, right? Get first selected option, which means it will return you the first selected option which is present in that select dropdown. And then there is deselect all, which will deselect all the selected options associated with select tag. Okay. Now, if you notice, there are two similar methods here: get all selected options and get options, right? So get options will basically return all the options associated with the select tag, and this get all selected options will return all the selected options, right, in the select tag. So I need to correct this, but this is the difference between get all selected options and get options. Then there is also a method called is multiple, right? This method tells whether the select drop down allows you to select multiple elements at the same time. Okay. Now do note that all these deselect options, right, which you are seeing here, deselect options are only applicable if it is a multiple select drop down. So not all select drop downs are multiple select drop downs. Some of the drop downs you can only select one item at a time, but some drop downs they do allow you to select multiple items at the same time by pressing Control Option, and you can select multiple options in the drop down. So you need to keep in mind that these deselect commands will not work, or the get all selected options, right? Because these will only work when there are multiple options which are selected in the drop down. Okay. But in a normal drop down, you can use the select by visible text, select by index, or select by value. But get all selected option, get first selected option, right? These will work only with, or deselect all. This will only work with multiple select drop downs. Okay, so let's see how we can look at all these methods which we were talking about. Okay. So let's see if we have got a select drop down on this page, which we can use. Okay, so as you can see, this looks like a drop down on this page, which is a name filter. It has got some options and how to identify whether it is a select drop down or not. So inspect that element, and if you see a select class, right? So if you see a select class, that means it is a select drop down. And once you expand that select class, you will see different options, right? So these are all the options which are present on this particular drop down. And as I was talking about the values, right? So these are the values AZ, ZA. So here you can use the select by value. You can also use select by visible text. So this is the visible text, name A to Z, name Z to A, right? Price. So these are the visible text and these are the actual values, and then index you can use as per the number on the drop down. So all three methods are applicable, whichever you want to use to select up any particular value. Okay. So let's go back here and write another test here. Okay, I will say select values here. So to get access to all the different methods in select, right, you need to create an object of it. So you need to import the select package. Okay. Once you do that, create an object of the select class. Then create a new object here. So it's new select. And we need to pass the object is of web element type, right? So it has to be a element. So let's create a web element here. So you can create it by again using the web element class. So here you can basically use the locators to find the element and store it in a web element type. Okay. So every element which you are constructing, you can store it in a web element. So that will be a element type which is of web element class. Okay. So driver dot find element by dot. Let's see what it is. Okay, so select class equals to product sort container. Um, and there is data test. No other unique identifier which is available directly here. So we have to use XPath here again. So let's try to identify it with class and see whether it is unique or not. Okay. So I will use the select tag here and then at class equals. Okay, and you can see here 1 of 1, which means it is unique. So this XPath will work. Okay. And go back here by.xpath and just close this particular driver.find element, right? So this particular statement will return you a object of element type, right? Web element type, and that can be stored in a web element object. So that's what I have stored it here. Okay. Now I can pass that element here in the select object which I have created. Okay, once I do that, I will have access to all the methods. So let's see by value, right? So let's use select by value. We need to pass the value here. So what's the value? Let's try to select something name Z to A. Okay. So the value is ZA. And let's see whether it is able to select this value. Okay, it is not able to identify the element. Okay, yeah. So it's quite logical. It is not able to identify. So when we are trying to launch our web page, okay, so we are launching sourcedemo.com, and if you see, this is the inventory page, and this page comes after only you log in into the source demo page, right? So a WebDriver is not even reaching this page in order to identify this element. And that is why it is throwing that error that it is not able to identify this element because it is not present. We are still on the home page, right? So we have not navigated, we have not logged in and we have gone to that page. So that is the reason behind the error. Okay. So what we can do is probably we can basically call the validate login right here. So what it will do, it will just execute this method because this is just a method right inside the class, and it can be used as a reusable method also. So it will execute everything inside this, okay, and it will go to the home page or the products page, after which I can perform this validation. So let's see if it works that way. I know you would not have seen whether it has selected this value or not. So for that reason, but there was no problem with the identification. It was able to identify this page. But if you still want to verify whether it has actually selected, just comment out this driver.quit so that it doesn't close the page after it execution is over, right? So that we can verify whether it has actually selected that option. Okay, so as you can see, this was our value, which was we have selected Z to A. By default, it is A to Z. Okay, so it has selected this value. You can also perform some validation here. You can grab this value which is being selected and put an assertion there to make sure that you have selected the right value. Okay. Now, similarly, you can also use other ways of doing this. So if I say select by index, okay, and I say 3. So basically it will select the fourth element. Okay. So as you can see, it has selected the fourth element. Now you would ask me if I have given index 3, why it would select the fourth element. The reason is index always starts from 0. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is the fourth index. So that's how you select any particular option by index. And if the last option, if you want to select it by visible text, okay. So for this, let's go back here. And let's inspect to see what is the visible text here, okay. So these are all the visible text. Let's select this price low to high option using the visible text. Okay, so the low to high option is selected, as you can see. Right, so you can use all these different methods to select any particular option from a select drop down. This is how you do it. Okay, first create the element for your select drop down, pass that element into the select object, and then use that object to select any particular value by passing the required values. Now, I showed you another option called whether it is a multiple select drop down or not, right? Now, if you look at it manually, I cannot select multiple values here, right? But how do I verify it programmatically, right? Or by Selenium scripts? So that I can do by doing select dot is multiple. Okay, so what I can do here is if select is multiple, okay, so let's see whether it is a multiple select drop down or not. Okay, so it is not a multiple select drop down. So this is how you can verify using the is multiple method. Okay, so whether it is a single select drop down or a multiple select drop down. If it is a multiple select drop down, you can go ahead and use all the different methods which are present for specifically for multiple select drop down. Okay, now we can have an example for that. There is a demo page which has got this multiple select drop downs, and you can find it in different applications which you work with this multiple select drop downs. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so if you can see, this is something called a multiple select dropdown. It may be in different forms in different applications. This is one type of multiple select dropdown, right? So when you press Control, you can select multiple options here. So this is what something is called multiple select dropdown. And for this, Selenium provides you with specific methods to deal with this kind of dropdowns. Now, this is a simple select dropdown, which has got only, you can select only one item. Okay. So for that, you can use the methods which we have seen. But for this kind of element, you need to use some other methods which we were discussing about, right? You can also find it when you are inspecting it. You will see select multiple, right? So the class type is multiple, which means it is a multiple dropdown. Okay, so let's try to work out with this. Let's see how we can identify this. So I can do it with name if it is unique. Okay, so let's take it here. Create another test here. Public void select multiple values. Um, Now, since it is a different URL, right, it is not ideal to use it in the same class which contains already a given URL. But since we are just doing it for demo purpose, right, what I can do is once it goes here, I can change the URL by using another method which we discussed, which is driver.navigate.to. Okay, so this is useful in this type of cases where I want to go to a separate URL from the actual homepage URL. Okay. So let's grab this URL. And let's also maximize it if it is, we have already done that, so not required. Now let's grab this item. So driver dot find element by dot name from LB. Okay, and let's store this in a web element type. So I will call it web element equals to this. Okay, so this will store the element which is our drop down. Okay, and it can identify with the name. Now let's try and check this out, right? So let's take this logic and see whether it is a select drop down, multiple drop down or not. Okay. So before that, I need to create a select element. So select equals to new select. Pass the element here. Okay, now let's try and run this. Okay, so as you can see, it is printing on the console that it is a multiple select drop down. So now we can go ahead and perform all the different operations on this particular element. Okay, so we have, what we can do is, let's check out the first method, which is get first selected option, right? So string option, you can say option 1 equals to select dot get first selected option. Okay, so it returns a web element type, so we cannot store it in a string. We'll call it like this. Although I cannot print it out, right? But what I can do is I can print something else here. So what I'll say option 1 dot. Let's see what it has got. So we can print out the value, right? So let's use get attribute, and here we'll use value. Let's see if it prints out the value of the first selected option in my select dropdown. Okay, so no options are selected. So that means no options are selected by default in the dropdown, and hence it is not able to find the first selected option. Okay, so that's valid. Let's select one option here. Okay, so select by index, and we'll say 1. So it will select some value, and then we'll print out that value, what it is. Okay, so as you can see, it has selected Russia, which is at index 1. Okay, so this is the value Russia, which we have grabbed using the get attribute method, and we selected this value by index. Okay. Now, the most important thing in multiple select dropdowns is how you can select the multiple options, right? So there is no default method provided by Selenium for this, but you can use all the select methods one by one, right? So to select multiple values. So here, for example, you see, if I do another select here, select by index, let's select the index 2. And I can do another one, select by index, or you can use any particular value. So I will be selecting 3 values from the drop down, 1, 2, 3, all by index. Okay. So now what I can do is, if I want to get all the values, right? So select dot get all selected options. I can do that. And what it returns me is a list of web elements. Okay, so I need to use the list object type, and here I will say list web element and elements equals this. Okay, so it will return me all the elements. And then what I can do is I can print some values here. Okay, but we need to iterate through each element if you want to print this. Okay, so let me do this for each. Web element 1. Okay, and elements, so this is the for each loop, and I want to print the value of each element. Okay, so element 1 dot get attribute value. Okay, so that should return me or print out all the values which are selected. Let's see if it works. Okay, so it selected all the options. I think I had already selected Russia above, that's why it is already selected. But if you see, these are the 3 index which I selected: Russia, France, Japan,